Hello, test, test, test. Hey, Brooklyn, good to see you. I got here all by myself. I'm pretty proud of that. How's the sound? Hi, Brooklyn. Johnnie Bernhard here to talk about Sisters of the Undertow. Great, great. Are you going to introduce me tonight in any way, or I just take a big leap at 7? Okay. 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 Well, that's, hey, you know, at my age, I really don't get embarrassed anymore. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, we got 4 minutes. I don't know if any of y'all have joined us. It's not quite 7. If you have, send me a comment who you are and that you're in the house, and I'll start promptly at 7 p.m. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Johnnie Bernhard. I'm very happy to be with you tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your family and just finishing dinner if we're on the East Coast, and supper if we're in the deep South or the Southwest. Thanks for joining me. A very special thank you to Brooklyn, who held my hand today and walked me through the tutorial of going live with you, and as well as Paul, who does all the things behind the scenes to make stuff like this happen. I'm very, very grateful to be with you. So how this is going to work is that I will chat and I will look for your questions or sentences, whatever remarks you have about who I am as a writer, what I write, and about my latest novel, which is Sisters of the Undertow. This book debuted, the official date was going to be Valentine's Day, and there was a bit of a jumble with that, but it actually debuted March 2nd, 2020. It is a 2020 Pulpwood Queen official selection. Very grateful to Kathy Lee Murphy, our Pulpwood Queen, for honoring me with that selection. For some of you that are new to the term Pulpwood Queen or the Pulpwood Queen Academy, and I have a lot of friends I invited from Ocean Springs and across Louisiana and Mississippi and Texas that follow me as an author. There's authors, there's wannabe authors, and there's readers with us tonight. So, what is the Pulpwood Queen Nation? Well, we have to begin with a very special lady, Kathy L. Murphy, who resides near Jefferson, Texas. And Kathy is a book lover and used to work in publishing. And 20 years ago, she had a book club and was a hairdresser at the same time and wore a feathered boa and leopard print and a crown and called her book club the Pulpwood Queens. And it grew and grew through her personality and love of others and love of authors and literacy to over 800 chapters across the world. It's the largest book club in the world. And I was privileged to join this very special group when Kathy selected my second novel, How We Came to Be. And I did my first girlfriend weekend in January in Jefferson, Texas. And oh my goodness, you just have to go. I am inviting all of you to go because there really aren't words to describe it. It's a bit of a Mardi Gras with a lot of feathers and crowns and jewelry and costumes, a bit of wine drinking, women, uh, some men just having a terrific time together. Authors, New York Times best-selling authors, literary authors, historical fiction authors, and the readers, the book clubs, the different chapters throughout the country that support them. So I'm here today at the invitation of the Pulpwood Queen Academy to talk to you about my third novel, Sisters of the Undertow. And I am coming from you live from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. This is a very quaint little town right on the Mississippi Sound, which is next door to Biloxi, an old port town, much like Galveston in New Orleans, all those great historic port towns. But I live in Ocean Springs, a charming little community. It was founded in 1699 by a Frenchman. The fleur-de-lis is our symbol in this community. We're very proud of our heritage. But my story really begins in 1962 in Houston, Texas, where I was born. And I'm a fifth generation Texan. And I love incorporating history and Texas, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, Louisiana into all my novels. So, why do I write? Probably because I've been an avid reader since I was a child. I had cut my teeth on the Laura Ingalls Wilder's books. To me, they were such an escape into a world I didn't know, the pioneer life on the Great Plains and the story of a family and how they survived that life. I love the great detail that the author put into her writing, all the way from describing what the snow was like during a blizzard, her father's beard. So I became enamored to descriptive writing as I became older. Of course, my role model was Nancy Drew. I mean, really, how could you not like Nancy Drew? She had great clothes, drove a sports car. She was the girl that solved the mystery. No one had to do it for her. To me, it was the perfect example that a girl could be smart and in charge. So from Nancy Drew, I loved my English classes. I wrote a lot of bad poetry in high school and of course, middle school. Loved my English classes. I was the girl that in my science and math classes, I kid you not, I held up my 3-ring binder, and behind that was a paperback book, and I read during those classes. Thank God I was able to breeze through them, um, those English classes, but had a tougher time for a good reason with the math and science. I graduated. I was living in Houston. I had a great apartment. First, I lived in the dorms, University of Houston. I got an undergrad degree in journalism. And why did I do that? Why did I not go straight away into English? I went into journalism because I wanted to write and I wanted to be taught how to write. I had a love of story from early on. It wasn't necessarily celebrity story. I just wanted to hear the everyman story. Uh, the everyday woman, the everyday man, or the child that has to make a tremendous decision where that can be life changing. And I think that's who I am. I think that's who you are. And those are the characters in my book. I love being a journalist in Houston in the 80s. It was great fun, great restaurants. I love the city of Houston because of its diversity. Today, there's over 90 different languages spoken there. There's such a richness to that culture. And that's where I learned to love Vietnamese food, Italian food, German food, Mexican food, Czech food. It's just a tremendous culture. And so it isn't unusual for me to write a novel where there's someone from Budapest or someone from East Texas or someone from Copenhagen, because I'm really celebrating that diversity I was born into in Houston. And throughout the years, I nurtured that in journalism and on to everything else in my writing. Once my husband and I started a family, journalism was a very tough thing to do. I was working at night, covering meetings, of course, and I decided to go back to school and get an English degree, teaching high school English. So to me, that was the perfect job because I can still instill my love of reading and writing, and allowed me to spend more time with my family. I never regretted being an English teacher. It was the ability to affect change every single day. Um, and I've taught in South Louisiana. I've taught in Florida. I'm not a teacher in Mississippi, but in my early teaching career, I've been in very poor school districts where the population cut sugarcane for a living or worked in people's homes cooking and cleaning. And I learned a lot from every experience. In Florida, I went on to be a teacher on special assignment where I help students make career choices or college choices, always emphasizing that very important 3.5 essay, 5 paragraphs, 3 parts to that essay. So I've had a great career in following all those different forms of writing and reading. Um, there's nothing more rewarding for an English teacher when a student loves a poem, a play, a paperback. And I'm still in touch with many of my students I taught in the early 90s in Louisiana. That would be in Mandeville. I also taught in Morgan City, St. Mary Parish, and later in Sarasota County, Florida, which was a different um, student population, but just as rewarding, because I find that along the way, if we open ourselves up, everyone can teach us something. You know, we're still learning. It doesn't end when we get out of high school. It shouldn't end when we get out of college or we're trained. We should continue to be lifelong learners. And I think books are the best tools for that. If you excuse me, I'm going to look to the side. I see a lot of people signing in. And that's my touchstone, to see all those wonderful friends I've made in Ocean Springs and that I have made by being a Pulpwood Queen. So thank you very much for joining me. Oh, I see here from Elaine Sanchez, my high school English teacher encouraged me to write. Well, I hope you are still in touch with her and that she knows you have become a published author. That would be a affirmation to her career choice as a teacher. I see now you've asked another question, Eileen. What made me choose to write a character with cognitive disabilities? Well, several years ago, I was watching CBS Morning News, and I'm a huge fan of morning news. I get up very early. My husband gets up at 4 to go to work, and you know it's hard to get back to sleep when you're up at 4. So that's kind of my writing time and watch the news. And I was watching CBS Morning News, and there was a very beautiful young woman that was doing an interview. She was the wife of an NFL player. And as the wife of an NFL player, you would think the perfect Olympian specimen of health and beauty, all the things that life has to offer us. Except that this young woman had suffered through many miscarriages. And she was telling her story, how difficult it was to share that story with others because she felt like her body had disappointed her, that she had disappointed her husband and her in-laws and her mother and her father. All these terrible emotional undertows, yes, that's where I got the title, undertows that she was dealing with. So I took that aside and I sketched her out as a character. There is also someone I go to church with, um, and I've told her this story, and she has read the book, but for her privacy, she'll remain unnamed in explaining your question, Eileen. This woman has a Down syndrome's child, and she's an adult now, her daughter. And I have watched them during Mass for many, many years, the unconditional love this mother has for the daughter, how careful she is with her daughter, how much her daughter enjoys her mother and being out and taking part in a ritual. It was the perfect example of unconditional love for me. So I combined the character sketch of the NFL wife with this woman, and I wanted to tell that story. Now, there's also a story many, many years ago when I was in high school. I worked at a family-run business. It's called a Dairy Mart. Like a Dairy Queen, but is family owned and operated. And the husband and wife team that owned it had a Down syndrome's child. His name was Rusty. And Rusty loved Sha-na-na. That was during the 80s or the late 70s, early 80s. And it was my job, if I closed at the restaurant, to clean the dining room and mop the floor. And Rusty would always help me. And he was so joyful and full of life and magical. And I've never forgotten his joy of life. It was like this mother's love for her child demonstrated in church, unconditional, accepted what was in front of him. And I thought, with all those complications of the disabilities for the family and for the child, that the reward of that unconditional love and that joy for life, it helped them move through life despite the many hardships. Was there a lesson I learned from writing this book, or maybe something interesting it taught me? Well, I learned those things, Brooklyn, when I'm going through the writing process. So I had the character sketch of this mother, and I'm very interested in yin and yang, the polar opposites. I am in life. I've had that concept in other books. So I had to create a daughter born into this family that is beautiful, physically perfect, intellectually gifted, and then her little sister, Kathy Renee, is born at 29 weeks. And our story in the beginning is set in the 70s. And she's born very early. And so with that came the cognitive disabilities as well as the physical. And we follow these sisters throughout their lives. And without giving the book away, without any spoilers, we have to look at the undertows in their life. So when we think about undertows, we think about water. Water is very much a symbol throughout this novel. There's the symbolism of baptism or rebirth. There's the symbol of hurricanes. There's several hurricanes mentioned in this book. And there's the undertow that many people live in their lives. On the surface, above the water, like I am today for you, my hair's done, I have on makeup, but normally in my home, under the surface, not in front of others, this is not the facade. I am myself without the makeup. So it's a lot like Facebook. Life looks really great on Facebook. But in the undertow of life, the part that people keep secret, there may be the undercurrents of loneliness, insecurity, the inability to love self and to love others. And this is very much the story of the older sister. Although she has all the intellectual gifts and the beauty, there are things that happen to Kim in her life that make her submerge to live a very isolated life in the other undertow. However, Kathy Renee, the premature sister, she has all these things to contend with, yet she's dealing with fate. She's dealing with that group of cards that life has given her, and she's playing her best hand. That's a hero. That's someone with courage. I want you to think about the people in your life that, despite what life has given them beyond their control, they rise above it. They rise above the undertow. So in the novel, I play upon the words lucky and unlucky quite a bit. And Marjorie Lewis, beautiful author as well, Pulpwood Queen, she's just written what was emotionally difficult for me to write. Oh my goodness, there were several scenes. Um, it was very difficult for me to write the scene where Kim, homecoming night, in her beautiful pink homecoming dress, realizes the night is not going to be what she expected it to be. And it's her first encounter with a boy. And it's a horrible disappointment. And it marks her for life with an inability to trust men. Now, they say when you're writing that if there are no author tears, there will be no reader tears. That was very, very difficult for me to write because I wanted to show her innocence as well as the metamorphosis that immediately took place in her character. And from that point on, Kim dives a little bit deeper into that undertow. Okay? She feels, whether we agree as readers, if it's right or wrong, she feels resentful that her sister receives more attention than she does. And I don't think this is an unusual thing to happen in a home. I interviewed a lot of women when I was writing this book, women with children that had disabilities, women with a family member that lived with them, either a father, a mother, or a child that was suffering with leukemia or cancer. Anything that takes away or takes tremendous attention and work from the caregiver, the rest of the family has to champion and rally around that. And Kim just wasn't good at that, although her parents loved her very much. She is very much akin to her grandmother, who's a bit of a kook. She's a loving grandmother. She's a chain smoker, loves to read romance novels where the scenes are of bare-chested cowboys. She loves her mauve magic lipstick, and she lives in a retirement home called the Villa Maria. And there's actually a retirement home in Ocean Springs by that name. And that's a little fun thing for me to honor where I live and the people that live there. So, in answering your questions, it was very difficult to write that part for Kim. And the novel is divided into three parts. We meet the sisters when they're very, very young, before public school, before the outside world, and they're very loving and very close. It's the introduction of public school and peer pressure and how people respond to Kathy Renee and her disabilities and how Kim is influenced by that. Part two, Kim goes off to college, Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas. She moves as far away as she can from her family because she feels like this is her chance to be her own person. Kim becomes a library science major. Why? And I'll tell you the backstory behind this. When I wrote my first novel, A Good Girl, I was very fortunate to be championed by librarians. The Ocean Springs Library, the Biloxi Library. They would send me emails. Come on over, Johnnie. Let's talk about your book. We'll have an audience for you. And I went to Biloxi's main library, which is near the VA in downtown. And it's not very different from many of our urban areas downtown. Uh, this is where our homeless population lives. The Libraries of America is where our homeless population goes to use the internet, to use a flushing toilet, to wash their hands, and to have AC and heat. And I didn't know that until I went to the Biloxi Library with a good girl. And I looked around and I saw this is my audience. And I thought, this is not about selling a book. This is about learning something from this audience. And I went home and wrote a sketch that night about that experience. Also, when I was there, I noticed a woman dressed very provocatively bring in two little girls and quickly leave. I could only assume she was a prostitute, um, and that the girls, that was their daycare. So I think there are so many things that our librarians are dealing with today that we don't realize. And so I made Kim, our protagonist, a librarian to honor librarians. And from that very poignant scene I witnessed at the Biloxi Library. So let's look over here. This is Carol. And the water is so symbolic of the emotions that we swim in and out that enwrap our lives. Right. That is correct, Carol. That is absolutely correct. This entire novel is about the undertows of life, especially for our protagonist, Kim, and how she swims to those waters that later become waters of baptism during Hurricane Harvey that struck Houston 2 years ago. And I write quite a bit about hurricanes. There's a scene where the two sisters, they're middle-aged adults now, and they're having lunch at the Lasker Inn, an actual bed and breakfast and wedding venue in Galveston, Texas. What's the history of the Lasker Inn? One of the greatest storms in American history as far as loss of life and property damage was the Great Storm of 1900 that landed in Galveston. The Lasker Inn was a beautiful, stately home that was donated to the city of Galveston after the storm of 1900 to become an orphanage because of the number of children that were left without parents. If some of you are interested in that story, there's a great book called Isaac Storm, and it's about the meteorologist that was employed in the city of Galveston at that time. He actually received a wire from Cuba warning him of this storm, and he didn't take it seriously. It's a very sad account, and I mention it in the book, as I mention a lot of great novels in Sisters of the Undertow, because remember, Kim is a librarian and a lover of books. So back to Isaac Storm. Isaac, the meteorologist, decided to alert the public too late, and he lost his pregnant wife and several children in that storm. And so the other storm that I mentioned, of course, is Hurricane Katrina. And I have a wonderful character I just adore from the point in Biloxi that escaped Katrina at that time and later came to Houston. And her name is Little Red Rambo, and she's quite a character, and she visits the library. And then, of course, Hurricane Harvey, which tremendous loss of property and the horrible floodwaters. But back again to that original question, those scenes, Marjorie and Carol, about writing the tragedies of life and the loss of life and what we learn on our journey. Yes, they're very emotionally difficult to write. I always know when I read something that I've written that's a huge impact scene, I read it over and over to make sure that I get the emotion correct, that it's not melodramatic, but it represents true life and to what people suffer, both personally and within a family. Okay. Oh, I see Susan Peterson here, a great lover of authors. I also met her through the Pulpwood Queens. Susan Peterson has a great Facebook group called Sue's Reading Neighborhood. It's free. If you're a book lover, hop on board and join her group. I see Catherine Fife from Texas. Much love to you, Catherine. And I hope to see you in Galveston at the Lasker Inn in August, if we're allowed that privilege and things are safe COVID wise. And oh my goodness, my cousin Angela Curly K is with us tonight from Central Texas. Oh my gosh, what a touchstone. Someday I will write a book about what wild cousins we were back in the day in Salado, Texas. Oh my goodness, so good to see you here, Angela. Oh yes, Eileen, your question, do I research my novels? Yes, absolutely. Um, Sisters of the Undertow, I did a lot of research about disabilities, uh, the suffering women go through. I did a lot of personal interviews with women who suffered multiple miscarriages. I did a lot of research on the different hurricanes and what they actually do uh, in the atmosphere and on the ground and how they occur and how they move. You know, there's a very poignant scene between the two sisters when they're little girls and their father is watching with them outside as Hurricane Allen moves through Houston, the eye of the storm moves through, and explains to the little girls that a hurricane can sometimes begin with the wind from Africa. Yes, I do a tremendous amount of research. Okay, I see Stephanie Chance is here, Pulpwood author, great friend, lovely woman. Pardon me why I look, I see Yvonne Pardon, Ocean Springs librarian who championed me from the get go. And back to Eileen's question about research. My first novel, which Yvonne was so kind to champion, A Good Girl, that's 3 centuries, a lot of immigration, the Republic of Texas. I followed the Germans and the Irish in the 19th century and how they immigrated to America. I always have an immigrant in every novel I write, um, because I think it's something America does really well. I am from German and French and a little bit of Irish. When I was researching A Good Girl, actually that started when my father was still alive in the early 90s. He would always talk about a great grandma Chapman, an Irish grandmother that doted on him and was a great cook and was very loving and kind. And so my dad and I began doing a lot of genealogy work, and I kept all those notes, and I never did anything with them. And after my mother and father died is when I really had the opportunity to begin writing, um, with the blessings of my family. I did a lot of freelance work as a journalist. I wrote a column for the Ocean Springs paper just to get my narration going, in the habit of writing every day. So A Good Girl has tremendous research. In my second novel, which was a Pulpwood Queen selection, How We Came to Be, my immigrant is from Budapest, Liana Supak. And that story came to be because I had the privilege to go to Budapest, a gift from my youngest sister, Joanne Longoria, in El Paso, Texas. And when I was there, I was on the Pest side. The Pest is the city, there's the beautiful Rhine River, and then there's Buda, the city, the ancient city. So on the Pest side, I pardon me, the Danube. I said the Rhine is the Danube River. So on the pest side of that river, I saw a monument to the people that had lost their lives during the Second War in Budapest, and they were bronze shoes. There was a bronze shoes of a baby, a work boot, a man's loafer, a woman's high heel, and I was struck by its stark simplicity that spoke volumes, and I had to do the research. And so that was the springboard for that novel, was to create that character so she could tell her story of losing her mother and father, and going at night down the Danube to try to get to the American side, because she had heard that the Americans were coming into Germany and liberating Germany, um, which, by the way, is my mother-in-law's story, who is a World War II bride, married American GI that was in Germany during the war and after the war, a Texan, Marvin Bernhard, from the Hill Country of German descent that spoke German. Uh, they fell in love, stayed married many, many years until death parted them, and had 5 children. So it's a wonderful American story, and that's really the backstory of that novel. So in this, How We Came to Be, my immigrant, I have several, is a boy from Syria who comes to America, uh, where his father is an engineer at Johnson Space Center at NASA. And he goes to help rescue the children and the refugees that are fleeing the war in the Middle East and ISIS. And many of you probably remember those very poignant scenes several years ago of the boats falling apart and many people drowning before they could reach the shores of Greece, Lesbos, Greece. And so I wove that vision, that story, into Sisters of the Undertow. Again, symbolism of the water and the Aegean Sea. And later, my character goes to Copenhagen. She was very much a fan of Hans Christian Andersen and his beautiful story of The Little Mermaid. And if you haven't reread it as an adult, which I did in doing my research, oh my goodness, that is a tender, tender love story of a mermaid and a prince who rejects her for someone else, despite her giving up everything to please him. So Kim, in her metamorphosis, in learning to love, is experiencing all these undertows and all this history until the third part of the book, where he hears the warning of Hurricane Harvey and floodwaters, and she lives downtown near Buffalo Bayou, a flood-prone area, with her dog, and she doesn't evacuate. I'm not going to tell any more of that story, but that hurricane serves very much as a baptism for Kim. Oh, I see here from Amanda. Budapest is home to one of my many of my favorite museums. Yes, the Museum of Terror. Yes, Amanda, it's a truly beautiful city. I thought that Buddha on the hill was absolutely amazing. Those images, I don't think will ever leave me. Susan, Stephanie, pardon me. I'm so glad you got to visit there last April. And Eileen, please, I hope you get to go to Budapest someday. I know that my friend uh, Beth, who is with us tonight from Ocean Springs, she's been a huge fan and supporting me from the very beginning. I know that as part of her heritage, and I know that she's been to Budapest. So I'm very grateful that all of you have had that experience. I am scrolling to see anymore. I see Eugenia Lewis, a lady from Pascagoula, a book lover, is here with us tonight. Thank you. Leona Lee, dear friend, also an author. Yes, Leona, I knew you were from St. Mary's Parish. I didn't know we ever had that story. And I wrote about St. Mary's Parish in how we came to be. There's a love interest, a handsome Cajun man from Morgan City that goes on to get his MFA at the University of Texas. And that's a wonderful love story between him and my main character. Oh my goodness, Linda Schumann, my dear friend from Ocean Springs, a book lover. It's been a kind supporter through the years. When is your next book coming and what is the premise? Well, Linda, I really want to continue to write about women in different stages in their life. So our protagonist in A Good Girl is a 50-year-old woman married that finally realizes I don't have to be the good girl anymore. I could be myself. And ladies, that's when, I don't know if you heard this, when I was growing up in Texas, at that time, it was always, now be a good girl. Don't complain. Don't cry. Do what you're told. And so that title is symbolic of what that character goes through in discovering self-love and self-discovery in it's okay to be yourself. No one's expecting you to be perfect. Uh, so that's a 50-year-old woman in that novel. My second novel, this woman's a little bit younger. She's a divorced woman trying to wing it in the dating scene and also as a single parent. And Karen likes her wine, so she needs to figure some things out. And in the third novel, we meet Kim and Kathy Renee. We follow them from childhood all the way to middle age. And so with this fourth novel, I'm working on a character by the name of Hannah. That name may change, but Hannah is in her early 70s. And the reason I want to write Hannah's story is because I think women become more beautiful, smarter, sexier as they get older. I think they become a force that cannot be intimidated by societal whims. So I think so often in our culture, we think that after 50, after 60, women become invisible because we simply age. Well, this character, this 72-year-old Hannah, is going to rise to the occasion and kick some butt. In this novel, I'm going to introduce some bad guys, some men and women that really don't care about others. They care about the money they make in using others. So it's an interesting story. It's very difficult to write for me in that it's a bit more violent and not as psychological as my other novels. I'm going to set this novel at a ranch about 100 miles from the border between Texas and Mexico. So, Beth Riley, thank you for that. And all of you for looking forward to that. I'm a year and a half, 2 years out. I see Sue Ann, my Ocean Springs friend, a great supporter, an avid reader. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, we got a bunch more time, and there's Claire Fullerton. She's got a book out, Little T, great Southern fiction / literary fiction writer, also a Pulpwood queen. Claire's joining us from Malibu. I see Victor Hess in the house. He's from Louisiana, Slidell, very close to New Orleans. Victor and I have been friends for a while, exchanging writer ideas. He's about to come out with his third novel. I see Nancy Dora, my Ocean Springs friend, a great supporter of what I do. I saw earlier in the feed someone asked the question, how do I define success as an author? And this is something that I asked myself early on. You know, before I wrote A Good Girl, I went to every conference I could. I wanted to learn from the masters, where there were New York Times best-selling authors talking about their writing journal, where I did pitch sessions with literary agents. I knew I had to get out of my bubble, my box, to learn about traditional publishing. And one of the biggest places I learned was interacting with a group in New Orleans called Words and Music Literary Feast. It was a husband and wife team. Rosemary James and her husband Joe owned this vintage bookstore right behind the cathedral in Jackson Square. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful bookstore. There were handwritten letters by T.S. Eliot hanging on the wall. It was a book lover's author's dream to walk in there. Um, and it was also the space where William Faulkner lived during the 20s when he was writing. So Rosemary and her husband bought and remodeled it, where the downstairs was this gorgeous bookstores and upstairs was their incredible home. Oh my goodness, it was a treat to be invited there. Lovely woman. But they would do an annual Words and Music conference where there were authors invited from all over the world with great sessions, and I learned a lot from them. I also went to the Houston Writers Guild conferences once a year in Houston, learned a lot from all those sessions. So early on, I knew I had to get all the information I could about this industry. I looked at it as this is a new profession for me. At 50, I'm starting a new job. I need to learn everything I can. And then once I did, I had a very honest conversation with myself, and I think all authors do. What did I want out of this? The most important thing for me as an author was to see my books in a library. And because of librarians all over the country, and because of my publisher, Texas Review Press, in conjunction with Texas A&M University Tech Press and the Texas Book Consortium, I have distribution to the libraries, public libraries, and university libraries all over the country, even Target and Walmart, to indie bookstores. They opened that door for me. I am very, very grateful for that. The second dream I had was if this book, any of my books, could be taught in a school. Because I was an English teacher, I love teaching novels and plays and poetry. And I saw that dream come true through the Biloxi St. Patrick High School, which is a blue ribbon school, many national merit scholars, and the book was taught through their advanced placement English classes, as well as in Bay St. Louis, Our Lady Academy. I'm happy to teach the literary elements wherever I go. I did this in Hattiesburg, Mississippi at a high school there. I don't charge. Uh, it's it's my honor to do that, to have that touchstone. Okay, so Linda Schumann, she says, How many main characters are waiting in your head for their stories to be told? Linda, I will tell you honestly, how do I find my characters? Um, I listen and I watch people. I love people. I love their stories. Um, when I said this last night in another virtual book event I was doing, I remember being in a salon before COVID, and I had the color on my hair, so I'm in that seat for an hour, and I'm listening to the stylist and the guy getting his hair done. And he is complaining and complaining about his brother and this girl he used to date. Well, when he broke up with the girl in high school, his brother started dating her. And I'm thinking and hearing this man's conversation, okay, he's got to be in his late 30s, early 40s. It's middle age. He is still upset that his brother dated a girl he used to date in high school. So that planted the idea of sibling rivalry in Sisters of the Undertow. It's a universal theme, and I try to use universal themes within my novels. Okay, so what does that mean to the reader? Well, the universal theme is sibling rivalry is understood in America, Ireland, Budapest, France, Africa. It's everywhere. And I certainly remember a sibling rivalry in my household. I'm one of four sisters, two older brothers before me, and we're all stair-step. And I remember the girls had a bathroom, and there were pantyhose hanging on the shower curtain rod, and at least three different cans of Aquanet with mascara, lip gloss, and I could be in the hall talking to my friends the next day at school, and my sister three different cans of Aquanet with mascara, lip gloss, and I could be in the hall talking to my friends the next day at school, and my sister would walk by. Hey, I didn't tell you you could wear my shirt. I mean, that's what a sister does. A sister is going to tell you that's not a good hair look for you, or please do something with your eyebrows. But a sister, if you send a text at 11:30 at night during COVID and say, this is a very sad world, she's not going to text back. She's going to call you. Okay, so what do we know about sibling rivalry? It's love, hate, with a lot of passion all in between. So that's why, from hearing that conversation at the salon, it was the salon in Ocean Springs, that I thought about the sibling rivalry between Kathy Renee and Kim, two vastly different sisters. Okay, I see Jackie Castro Cooper, also an author whose book just came out, her nonfiction. Jackie is a physical therapist by trade, and her book just showed up on Amazon today. So congratulations to Jackie, and thanks for joining us. Any more questions? Pardon me while I read through the theme. I see that Ruth Benson has written, I would love to see Key West, Hemingway's Key West areas. Well, Ruth, as soon as the world is safe, please go and do that, because I think I visited Key West and Hemingway's home. It might have been in the 90s. And I tell you, it was absolutely glorious to see his manual typewriter and all these cats roaming freely about the house. It was absolutely amazing. And kudos to that organization in Key West that keep that home and the tours going so the lovers of Hemingway can enjoy it. I see Diane Lane Pierce here. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Diane. Great to see you here. Don't forget about your fishing lady from Ocean Springs character. Yes, Diane and I used to work together before I was able to retire and move into a writing life. And we talked a lot about women fishing in Ocean Springs and putting those Cajun Reeboks on. And if you don't know what a Cajun Reebok is, those are simply white rubber boots. Brooklyn, thanks again. This has been wonderful to me as well. We're getting close to our time, and there is Kathleen M. Rogers. Great to see you here, Kathleen Rogers, who's got a great book out, debuted in June. Her fourth novel is fiction. Oh my gosh, talk about a sister story. It is the Sisterhood Story Deluxe, The Flying Cutterbucks. So please look for that. And Kathleen is a 2021 Pulpwood Queen with that novel. So welcome to the sisterhood of the Pulpwood Queens, Kathleen. Okay, I see Marie Christopher. Great to see you here. And we just have a few more minutes. If there's any more questions I can answer, please ask. Another very important piece I've forgotten in Sisters of the Undertow is that the book is dedicated to the Cajun Navy and to people that work in animal shelters. And I use the term, these are the better angels among us. All of my animals have been shelter animals. We call them rescue dogs and cats, but I think Pancho and Lily and Sadie and Max rescued us. So please support those organizations. And as far as the Cajun Navy, I want you to reflect upon when Hurricane Harvey was flooding South Louisiana and the Houston area. And all along I-10 from Louisiana into Houston were the volunteers pulling their bass boats, their flat boats into Houston, paying for their own gas, leaving work, not asking for a penny to save animals and lives. When we think about this turbulent time we're going through in our country, and there is so much to be sad about and to pray for, think about all the good things about America. And those are those better angels among us. The Cajun Navy, the people that work at animal shelters, the people that provide food for the homeless, the people that drop off books for women's shelters because they can't leave those shelters for fear of violence. I want to thank you all for being with me tonight. I'm honored by your presence. Thank you, Pulpwood Queen Academy. Thank you, Brooklyn, for holding my hand and being very patient with me today. And to Paul, who makes this possible, and of course, to Kathy Lee Murphy, our Pulpwood Queen. My books are available at indie bookstores. I know it's a scary time to go in a bookstore. Please try to support them by calling them and saying, can you mail the book to me? Or emailing them. Simply ask for Sisters of the Undertow for Johnnie Bernhard, or that can be mailed to you. Of course, Amazon makes it very easy. The book's very cheap, the Kindle edition on Amazon right now, as well as the paperback. So when you buy a book from a traditionally published author, I'm sharing part of that sale with the university, with the publisher, with the person that designed the book cover, with their families. It feeds a lot of people, so I appreciate your support. And of course, the thing you always hear from authors, I appreciate an Amazon review, a Goodreads review. I would never tell you what to say. as I would never tell you how you should feel about a book. That's a privilege for a reader to have their own opinion. So, but I do appreciate reviews. Thank you so much, Susan Snyder, my sweet, sweet neighbor. Love you, Leona, Linda, Barbara, Janet. It's been a great night. My honor. Thank you so much.